Hey guys, it's Christian, the terrorist. So today we are talking about Grüner Veltliner, the most representative grape of Austria. We are back to Austria after a long time, and we compare the grape from the two most relevant Austrian wine regions neighboring each other in Vienna area near the Danube River. To do so, I'm happy because I was lucky to find two quite relevant wineries and with similar style because they are both on biodynamic. So Grüner Veltliner is the most planted grape in Austria, the representative. Very summery in general. Then of course there are versions a bit more structured that can age, that can go well with the food. But in general it's really a summery wine, so perfect even in this season. And we have regular levels today with 12 and a half alcohol, so really perfect. 25 vintage both, which is the best vintage in the last few. And the grape is quite late ripening. So as we spoke last time in the climatic shift video, the late ripening is a solution, but can be also an issue with the heavy rains of the autumn, because we are talking about mostly October harvest, even if Loimer started already in September for the 25 vintage. Link below to the previous video, very important to understand what is going on and which are the European regions that are thriving best. So I said, interesting grape from these two most relevant regions. So Kamptal and Wachau. Wachau is the most prestigious overall, with specific own classification levels, etc. Is very important, not just in Austria, but Kamptal also is doing its part. Usually Grüner Veltliner is said to have also some spicy, peppery. These two regions tend to give a bit different results, as we will see, but here we are on that level, so it's all to be seen. Even because usually they are from different sources and lower lying slopes, so maybe more similar characters, more straightforward. Anyway, the grape is quite recognizable from Riesling. They are both planted, a huge majority in these regions in particular. And let's start to talk about the region. So we have Fred Loimer, Grüner Veltliner 25 from Kamptal, 12 alcohol, and Josef Fischer, Ruhrsdorf, Grüner Veltliner, Federspiel, Wachau, 12.5 alcohol, 25 vintage also. So Federspiel, that is the entry level in Wachau, usually about 12 and a half alcohol. Smaragd are the cruise usually, but this is also single vineyard, as the name is hinted. Specific position on the south bank of Danube River, so exposed to north. As we hinted in the last video, that is a possible solution in these warming conditions. And that area that was never so famous, probably now in Wachau is becoming more and more relevant with these warmer summers. So I start to pour the first. I go from the lower alcohol. In the end, as I hinted, they may be similar because the soils are quite similar. The base in these regions is gneiss underneath, bedrock. Gneiss is sort of granite, very hard rock, but this is very low. So in Kamptal, there is a lot of top levels, so surface of loess and clay, so this sedimentary brought by the wind, so less compact, and with the clay, so there is a bit of a limestone component, so these are good for retention of water and giving a bit rounder structure to the wines in general, especially due to the clay. While Wachau tend to be more rocky, steeper, as you can see a bit from the maps. I was there about 20 years ago, and I was impressed by Wachau, because Wachau is really on Danube, while Kamptal has the Kamp River, so it's a sort of junction there between Danube and Kamp, and the Kamptal is in between, while the Wachau is really on the shores of the river, and is much more steep, rocky, very little topsoil, only on the bottom, really close to the river, and different composition. So the cru concept in Wachau for me is even more extreme than in Tokai or Burgundy, because really you have a lot of small differences, making the extreme sense of the single vineyard concept, showing different characteristics of the wine. The altitudes, a bit the exposition, the rock, some winds, because there are some channels, or in their case, they are facing north, so on the southern bank, so even more different conditions. So it is quite impressive on that. One day I will for sure do a tasting about some cruise there, but they are quite expensive. Wachau is a very expensive region, so only these wines are very affordable. I paid both of them, this one about 13 and this about 18 in my country, so out of Austria, so quite reasonable prices, we cannot complain. But when you go high, Kamptal is a bit more affordable in general, but also the cruise are a bit more expensive, so these ranges are very affordable. So as you understand, there is quite a difference. It's going even up to 400 meters Wachau, while in Kamptal they are mostly smooth hills, about 200, 250, about 300, just a few spots. So quite a bit of differences. So Leumer is a big name there. 2006 he started to be biodynamic, so very early, and he was different already before. He's really one of two, three most relevant wineries, medium size, really believing in everything he's doing. He's using also oak, in this case is only steel, but whole cluster pressing, so there is that short period of skin contact and also with the stems, so that is interesting. It's biodynamic, so it's extreme in everything, so indigenous yeast, slow fermentation, in still on the fine lees for a few months, then bottled. It's really the entry level. Sourced from different vineyards, from Langenlois is the main city there, so that is the reason of the name. So it's a quite characteristic yellow, just a hint, maybe for that short skin contact, giving a hint to richer. So these are wines made naturally, so in the vineyard first of all, but also in the cellar. They are not constructed. There is little intervention even in the cellar by both of them. It's not that intense to start. Delicate fruit, I would say. Usually there is some spicy peppery, as I hinted. Let's see here. Usually in Kamptal is not showing the kind of character, also because of the loess and clay, because tend to be around there. Also the acidity usually is a bit lower compared to Wachau, for example. Yeah, so far is even a bit shy, I would say, and different kind of fruits, touch of citrusy, some other orchard fruit. Quite straightforward, we can say. Even the minerality is not that marking. You smell touch of flinty, but very, just a hint. When you put it on the palate, you understand that it's biodynamic. Even if here there is no real skin contact, which gives much more that kind of style, but you feel it. Besides the terroir, also his style is giving a bit of roundness. The acidity is not that pronounced. It's not at the level of Riesling, of course, but even Grüner has a good acidity, and as I said, this was a great vintage, so very balanced in everything, but you don't perceive too much acidity. It's mostly the fruit, this footprint of the bio, this kind of roundness, touch of refreshing finish, a touch of mineral. So he's very famous for his crus. Those are very prestigious in the Austrian wine scene. And it's quite available all around, because this you can find in Hong Kong, in many countries around, even here. So it's quite easy to source. Now a hint of peppery, but very, very minimal, is coming out. It's very pleasant and also very suave, I would say. Surprising also, because the issue of many biodynamic is that they can be a bit rustic, while on the nose is very refined. Of course, it's not a big wine. This is really easy aperitif, perfect summery with simple seafood dishes or easy starters. It's not that long, but it's medium persistent, leaving very pleasant palate. Yeah, quite smooth. So a bit the characteristic of the soil and his style of biodynamic. So it's not that vibrant, it's not that mineral, it's more on the pleasant roundness. For the 13-14 euros, for sure a very nice wine. So let's move to Josef Fischer. So what is this key point? Rossatz, the village where they are, so on the south bank, was having vineyards even before, but was never considered that much because of the cooler north exposure. There is also the forest on top of the village with cooler winds, so it was indeed tougher, especially in colder vintages in the past. Probably the ripeness being also later ripening a grape was sure complicating, but the winery is there since 140 years, a few generations. But Josef made the step up. So he took charge 10 or so years ago, he's still quite young, and he's moving to Bio 2. So we are on the same path. At the moment it's certified organic, but no bio yet, because it takes time. But he's going that direction. And the weather, as said before, and so here we have a nice example, of course not the proper vintage since it's good vintage. We should see the 26 how we perform, but for sure it's an advantage because the north exposure means much less under the hot sun. The drought is a problem anywhere, anyway, that is indeed. For sure the kind of soil that we have there is retaining a bit more moisture, so that helps, but a vintage like this, very dry so far, is a bit, of course it's not finished, 26. These grapes will be ripe later, at least a few weeks more, so if now we get some rain, things may change. Here is completely another story. So in the end, the terroir is not that different. As I hinted before, this is on the lower slope, so near the river, and is also a mix, so the gneiss is still below, and there is a sort of paragneiss with some loess also, and clay, a bit of lime, so it's in a way similar to the other. It's a big strength. This is interesting on the website, especially in Wachau. They tend to give you the photo of the spectrum of the soil. Very interesting for who is terrorist like me to understand better the things. So in this case, there is a good similarity also here, a bit of retention water, then being on the low slope near the river, maybe also some, at least in the older days when there were more floodings influence. So more similar, but for sure with more rock component, to make it simple. Then north exposure, so less sun, so for sure acidity higher. Already the first smell is telling me that this is cooler, fresher, has more that citrusy marking, that cool mineral. So also here indigenous yeast, so going that direction, but still not extreme like Loimer. But he's using in general big used casks, so the traditional style there in Austria, but there is no detail about this one. So, but anyway, used, so it's just for the micro oxygenation. On that, his website is a bit basic and not many info. It's quite refined, more than the other, has a bit more complexity also. There is also a touch of flora here. Yeah, much more. You feel that has a bit more alcohol, a bit more structure, a bit more length, staying longer. You have more freshness and also the mineral on the palate, drying you up, but a nice fruit. There is not only citrusy, here are also some sweeter fruit. They are very pleasant on the palate. This perfect aperitif, of course, 12.5, but with this length can compete better even with the food. So not just simple starters, also some seafood a bit richer taste can do well. Here in a way I find some of the characteristic styles of Wachau, even if, as explained, the soil here is not the typical very rocky that we see more on the higher slopes especially on the other side, but even Rosas, closer to the forest, is more gneiss. So a lot of differentiations, making it really incredible. I was really impressed when I was there. But this Federspiel is very nice. It would be really interesting to try the 26 and see how it will show. So we can summarize saying that in this case specifically, they have similar styles and the soils are more similar too. So there is not a huge difference as I am used to between Wachau and Kamptal, but a sort of differentiation is there. The exposition a bit different, more rocky anyway. In Wachau, so a bit more on the vibrancy, the other a bit more on the roundness. These are the two key differentiations that we can say about the two regions. Yeah, there is also some apple, and I wouldn't call, even if Wachau should show more the spicy peppery than the other because of their characteristics, and cooler because that usually shows more that, but here I don't see, maybe really, but less than the other, just maybe now a hint, a touch of spice, let's say, but very minimal. Yeah, very pleasant, very pleasant. Very nice aperitif wine. Has a bit more my style than the other. So I prefer. Then I'm a big fan of Wachau, so that is a reconfirmation and a good example of some differentiation in a short distance, because as you've seen from the map, they are really very close to each other, but there are several differences, and also the style still a bit, even if they are going in the same bio direction, still he doesn't do any skin contact, as I understood. That is another point. Yeah, becoming even more interesting. I think I will enjoy it even more over time. So not that simple, also not that straightforward, a bit more complex than the other. So very worth the 18 euros or so. Nice showcase to give you an idea of this interesting grape, still under the radar. It deserves some attention, especially in the top expressions can give impressive wines. Of course, it's still similar to Riesling in some ways, but with less acidity, more typical characteristics. So it's another story. Hope you enjoy, guys. Like, subscribe, share with your wine friends. See you next time, and salute.